He assumed you'd always be there. Not because he's a bad person, not because he consciously wanted to take you for granted, but because on some level, we all do this with the things we believe are secure. It's human nature. We underestimate the value of something when we don't feel like there's a real risk of losing it. Think about the things in life we appreciate the least, the routines, the comforts, the certainties, the warm bed we collapse into every night, the friend who always picks up the phone, the air we breathe. When something becomes constant, we stop noticing it, but take it away, even for a moment, and suddenly its importance is undeniable. That's exactly what happens in relationships. He didn't think about what life would feel like without you because he never imagined a version of reality where you weren't there. You were always the one who stayed, the one who tried, the one who forgave. Even in moments when he pulled away, even when he tested the limits of your patience, there was always a part of him that believed you'd keep holding on. And why wouldn't he believe that? You gave him every reason to. You showed up, you made an effort, you poured love, energy, and time into him, sometimes at the expense of yourself. And in return, he grew comfortable, maybe even complacent. He stopped asking himself the important questions. How do I make sure I don't lose her? How do I show her I appreciate her? Because he never thought he had to, until the day you let go. That moment when you stop chasing, when you stop proving your worth to someone who never should have needed the reminder in the first place. That's when everything shifts. Because suddenly, his assumptions don't hold anymore. The ground beneath him is no longer stable. The thing he never questioned, your presence, is now uncertain. And uncertainty is uncomfortable. At first, he might not fully register it. Maybe he thinks you're just pulling away temporarily, that you'll come back after a few days. After all, that's how it's always been, right? He does something hurtful, you get upset, but then eventually you reach out, you talk, you fix it. He's come to expect the cycle. But then something different happens. Silence. You don't chase, you don't explain, you don't beg for his attention or his effort. And that's when the discomfort starts creeping in, because now the certainty is gone. And for the first time, he has to ask himself, what if she's really done? What if I've pushed too far this time? And this is where the real emotional reckoning begins for him. Because if he truly didn't care, none of this would bother him. If he was completely detached, he wouldn't need to second guess anything. But the truth is, we don't panic over things that don't matter to us. So now, he's thinking about you in a way he hasn't before, not as a given, not as a security blanket, but as something fragile, something that could slip through his fingers if he doesn't do something. And here's the most fascinating part. This isn't about manipulation. This isn't about playing games or trying to trick someone into valuing you. It's about truth. You stepping back, you letting go isn't a tactic, it's a correction. A necessary shift in energy. Because if someone only realizes your worth in your absence, that means they were never fully seeing you in your presence. And that's the real wake-up call, not just for him, for you. Because now you get to see things clearly too. You get to see who actually steps up when you stop overcompensating. You get to see if he's willing to fight for what he once took for granted. You get to see if his feelings were ever strong enough to withstand the absence of your effort. And if they weren't, if he never reaches out, if he never changes, if he lets you slip away without a fight, then he's just given you the answer you needed all along. The answer that says you were never the one who needed to hold on. He was the one who should have never let go. The moment you let go, something powerful happens, not just to him, but to you. Up until now, you've likely been operating from a place of attachment, of investment, of effort. You've spent time analyzing his words, his actions, his silences. You've given second chances, explanations, and endless grace, even when he didn't ask for it. Not because you were desperate, but because you cared. Because when you care about someone, it's natural to want to make it work. But here's what most people don't realize. When you are the one holding everything together, you never get to see what the other person is truly willing to do. If you are always the one reaching out, initiating the repair, making the excuses for why he's pulling away, you don't give him the opportunity to show you what he's capable of. You think you're keeping the relationship alive, but really, you're just preventing reality from playing out. And then one day you stop. You decide, whether through exhaustion, frustration, or clarity, that it's no longer your job to carry all the weight. You let go, not to punish him, not to manipulate him, but because you realize you don't have to keep proving your worth to someone who should have recognized it from the start. And that's when the shift happens, because now now, instead of being the one chasing his attention, his time, his affection, you become something he has to actively choose, something he has to consider. And the moment you become a consideration instead of a certainty, his entire perception changes. At first, it might not hit him fully. He might assume you're just upset, that you'll cool down, that things will return to how they always have been. He's used to the pattern after all. He's used to you being the one who can't bear the distance, the one who wants resolution more than you want your pride. But then time passes and you're still not reaching out. Now, it's a crack in the foundation of his certainty. And uncertainty is uncomfortable. It forces reflection, self-examination. It forces a person to ask, wait, did I get this wrong? Did I push too far? This is when the emotional waves start to hit him. First, there's curiosity. He wonders what you're thinking, whether you're just waiting for him to make a move. Then there's doubt. He starts questioning his assumptions. Was she always this strong? Has she really moved on? And then the real kicker, what if she's better off without me? Now, why is this such a powerful moment? Because for the first time, he's forced to evaluate his own role in the situation. Up until now, he's had the luxury of assuming you'd always be there. But the moment you break the cycle, the moment you step back and stop pouring all your energy into him, he's left with nothing but his own thoughts. And let's be clear, if he never truly valued you, none of this will matter to him. If his feelings were shallow, if he was just enjoying your presence without ever being deeply invested, then your absence won't shake him. And that's an answer in itself, an answer you deserve to know. But if he did care, if there were real emotions underneath his complacency, then this moment will be deeply unsettling for him, because now he has to make a decision. Does he ignore this feeling, pretend it doesn't matter and risk losing you forever? Or does he step up, acknowledge what he had, and finally put in the effort he should have from the beginning? This is what detachment does. It forces truth to the surface. When you hold on too tightly, you blur the lines between what someone is willing to give and what you're forcing into existence. But when you let go, when you allow space, you get to see clearly. You get to see if he actually values you or if he was just comfortable with the convenience of having you around. And that's why letting go isn't about playing games. It's about respecting reality. Because if he really wants you in his life, he won't let you disappear. If he really values you, he won't wait for you to be the one to fix things. And if he does nothing, if he lets the distance grow, if he lets the silence stretch on without a fight, then he's just shown you exactly where you stand. And that truth, no matter how painful, is the most valuable thing you can have. When you let go of someone who took you for granted, you set something powerful into motion. The absence you create doesn't just leave a void in their life, it forces them into an unfamiliar and deeply uncomfortable psychological state. It forces them to sit with the reality of a world where you are no longer within reach, no longer available as an emotional safety net, no longer there to provide the reassurance they took for granted. And at first, they might not feel it. People who have been given the gift of your presence without effort often don't realize what they have until it's no longer an option. They assume you'll be there tomorrow, just like you were yesterday. They assume the door is always open. But here's the thing, when a door stays open too long, people stop noticing it's there at all. The moment you close that door, you change the dynamic completely. It's no longer about what he wants, what he feels, what he decides on his own timeline. Now, for the first time, he has to react to something outside of his control. And that's where the discomfort begins. At first, he convinces himself that nothing has really changed, that you're just being distant, that you'll eventually check in again the way you always do. But as the silence stretches on, something shifts. Doubt creeps in. And doubt is one of the most unsettling emotions a person can experience, especially when it threatens the stability of the identity they've built for themselves. See, up until now, he's built a version of you in his mind. The person who cares, the person who reaches out, the person who will always be there. That version of you was convenient. It allowed him to move at his own pace, to avoid making difficult choices, to avoid confronting what he really wanted. But when you stop showing up in that role, the mental picture he had of you starts to fracture. He can no longer rely on his old assumptions. And that's when he starts to wonder, did I get this wrong? That question might seem small, but it's incredibly powerful. It's the moment uncertainty becomes real. It's the moment he realizes he may have miscalculated your importance. Because now, it's not just about missing you, It's about questioning his own judgment, his own choices, his own perception of control. And this is where the regret starts to seep in, because now he's looking back on all the moments he dismissed, all the times he could have done more, all the ways he failed to appreciate you. And what makes regret so painful is that it arrives too late. It doesn't show up while you're still available, still trying, still invest. It only appears once the damage has been done, once the consequences are unfolding in real time. And the truth is, not everyone can handle regret. Some people will ignore it, suppress it, tell themselves whatever they need to hear to avoid taking responsibility. But others will feel it so deeply that it forces them to act. And this is where you have the real power, not in waiting for him to regret losing you, but in deciding whether his regret even matters to you anymore. Because here's the reality. Regret alone isn't enough. Just because someone realizes they made a mistake doesn't mean they're suddenly capable of being the person you deserve. What matters is what they do with that realization. Do they sit in their regret, wishing things had gone differently but making no real effort to change? Or do they step up, take responsibility, and finally show up in the way they should have all along? And more importantly, does their effort even make a difference to you at this point? Because by the time he finally wakes up, you may have already moved on. You may have already realized that your happiness was never meant to depend on whether or not he recognized your worth. You may have already stepped into a life where his validation is irrelevant. And that is the ultimate shift. Because when you truly let go, you don't just make him question what he lost. You make yourself realize what you gained. You regain your power, your clarity, your ability to choose rather than just be chosen. And once you reach that place, no amount of regret on his part will be enough to pull you back into something that no longer serves you. That's when you know you've won. Not because he came running back, but because you no longer need him to. When someone realizes you're no longer waiting for them, something shifts inside of them. It's a moment of reckoning, a sudden jolt that disrupts the comfort they once had in knowing you were always there. And this shift isn't just emotional, it's psychological. Human beings are wired to crave certainty. We like to believe we understand the world around us, that we can predict outcomes, that we have control over the people in our life. And for a long time, he had certainty about you. He knew you cared. He knew you'd reach out. He knew, whether consciously or unconsciously, that he had a place in your life that didn't require effort on his part to maintain. But when you remove yourself from that equation, when you truly let go, you introduce something into his world that he wasn't prepared for: unpredictability. Unpredictability is uncomfortable. It forces people to confront what they never thought they'd have to. And for him, that means facing a reality where you are no longer a guarantee. At first, he may try to rationalize it away. He tells himself, she's just upset, she'll come back. This is the first stage of realization, the denial phase. He assumes the dynamic remains the same, even though your actions have already changed. But then the days stretch on, the silence lingers. You don't reach out, you don't check in. And that's when the realization begins to deepen. He starts to ask himself questions he never considered before. Did I misjudge this? Did I overestimate my importance in her life? What if she's actually moving on? And this is where the mind plays its cruelest trick, because once the thought of losing you plants itself in his brain, it begins to grow. The same person who once felt so secure now feels something he didn't expect: uncertainty. And uncertainty breeds desire. Psychologists call this the scarcity principle. The less available something is, the more valuable it appears. This isn't manipulation, it's human nature. It's the reason why limited edition items sell out instantly, why we chase opportunities that seem just out of reach. The more we believe something might be taken away from us, the more desperately we want it. And now, for the first time, you are the scarce resource. He starts replaying old moments, trying to analyze them. He remembers the way you used to light up when he walked into the room, and now he wonders if someone else is making you smile like that. He remembers the way you used to listen to him, support him, care for him in a way that made him feel important, and now he wonders if someone else has taken your attention. And then the most dangerous thought of all creeps in: what if I was wrong about her? Because that's the thing about people who take others for granted. They always assume they can come back when they're ready, that you'll still be standing in the same place waiting for them. But when they realize you're not waiting, that you have the power to move on without them, that's when panic sets in. And that's when they start trying to rewrite the story. Maybe he starts reaching out, casually at first, a like on an old photo, a random text, a hey, how have you been, sent at an odd hour. Not because he has something important to say, but because he needs to see if the door is still open. He's testing the waters, seeing if you'll give him even the slightest indication that he still has a hold on you. But here's the real question. Do you still want him to? Because his reaction to your absence isn't the point. Your reaction to his sudden realization is. You have to ask yourself, does his regret change anything? Does his panic mean he's suddenly capable of being the partner you needed all along? Or is it just his ego needing reassurance? Because here's what you need to know. Just because someone finally wakes up doesn't mean they're ready. Just because they now feel the loss doesn't mean they're prepared to do what it takes to keep you. And if you take them back too easily, if you undo all the work you've done by stepping away, then you reinforce the idea that they can lose you and still get you back without effort. So you have to ask yourself, do you want a love that only shows up when it's afraid to lose you? Or do you want a love that recognizes your value before it's too late? Because the person who truly deserves you is the one who never made you feel like you had to let go in order for them to appreciate you. And once you understand that, you'll never settle for anything less again. There comes a moment when he realizes the weight of your absence. At first, it was easy for him to assume you were still there, even in the background. He may have even convinced himself that you'd reach out eventually, that this silence was just temporary. But the longer you remain detached, the more it sinks in. This isn't just a phase, it's a reality. And that's when the shift happens. He starts to feel the space you once occupied in his life, not just in the grand dramatic ways, but in the subtle everyday moments. He hears a song and instinctively thinks about sending it to you, only to remember he can't. He scrolls through old messages, not because he's sentimental, but because he's searching for a clue, a misstep, something to explain how he let you slip away. This is where regret takes hold. At first, it disguises itself as nostalgia. He tells himself he just misses certain things about you, the way you laughed at his jokes, the way you supported him when he was doubting himself, the way you made him feel important in a world that often made him feel small. But then, nostalgia gives way to something more unsettling, a realization that he may have underestimated what you meant to him. And that realization is where his regret deepens. Because here's the thing, when someone is given something valuable without effort, they don't always recognize its worth. It's easy to overlook gold when you assume it will always be there waiting to be picked up. But when it's gone, that's when its rarity is understood. And so he starts wondering, did he misjudge you? Did he push too far, thinking you'd always be there to pull him back? Did he take your kindness, your patience, your willingness to understand him as a sign that you would never walk away? These questions don't just haunt him, they challenge his entire perception of the dynamic he thought he controlled. Because now, for the first time, he's on the other side, and it burns. Maybe he thought he needed space. Maybe he thought the grass was greener elsewhere. Maybe he thought that losing you wouldn't really feel like losing, that life would simply continue unchanged. But that's not what's happening, because now, in your absence, he's realizing something profound. You weren't just another option. You were the option, the one who understood him in ways others didn't, the one who made his life richer, deeper, more meaningful, and now you're gone. So what does he do? Most likely he'll try to regain control, not necessarily because he knows exactly what he wants, but because his ego can't handle the idea that you could move on without him. So maybe he reaches out, a casual message, just to see if you'll take the bait, a like on your photo, hoping it sparks something in you. Maybe even a grand gesture, an apology that comes with promises of change. But here's what you have to ask yourself. Is he reaching out because he truly values you? Or is he reaching out because he fears losing his place in your life? Because regret alone doesn't mean change. Just because he feels your absence now doesn't mean he's suddenly become the person you needed him to be all along. And this is where your power lies. It's not in making him regret losing you. That's just a side effect of knowing your worth. Your power is in realizing that you are always the prize, that his recognition of your value doesn't define it, that whether he comes back or not, whether he finally sees what he lost or not, you are always enough. And the real question isn't about whether he regrets letting you go. The real question is, do you still want him now that you finally see what it feels like to live without waiting for someone to wake up? Because once you've stepped into that power, once you've felt what it's like to not be dependent on someone else's validation, you realize something life-changing. Regret is his burden, not yours. And that's when you stop chasing apologies. That's when you stop waiting for closure. Because the best closure isn't found in his regret. It's found in your ability to move forward without needing it. The moment when everything clicks, the moment when you realize you no longer need his regret to feel whole. At first, the idea of him regretting losing you might have felt like a kind of victory, a sign that he finally gets it, that he finally sees what he took for granted. Maybe you imagine the day he'd reach out, the day he'd admit that letting you go was a mistake. And for a while, that thought might have given you comfort. Because if he regrets it, then it means you mattered. If he regrets it, then maybe it wasn't all in your head. But here's where it gets interesting. There comes a point when you stop waiting for that moment, not because it wouldn't be satisfying in some way, but because you've outgrown the need for it. His regret, his realization, his eventual desire to come back, it no longer determines your worth, because you've already reclaimed it. And this is where the true power shift happens. When someone expects you to wait, when they assume you'll always be there in some way, even if it's just in the background, they never truly feel the weight of your absence. Regret only matters if there's still something to return to, if there's still a door left open. But when you truly let go, when you not only walk away, but close the door behind you, that's when the dynamic changes. Not because you're playing a game, not because you're trying to manipulate his emotions, but because you've genuinely outgrown the version of yourself that once waited for his clarity. And that's what shakes him to his core. Because here's what most people don't realize about regret. It's not just about missing someone. It's about realizing they've moved on before you did. It's about knowing that their life didn't just continue without you, it flourished. And that's when his regret turns into something deeper. It's one thing to feel nostalgic, to miss what was. It's another thing entirely to recognize that you no longer have access to it. That's the part that haunts him. Not just that you're gone, but that you're gone for good. And what makes this so powerful isn't that you set out to make him feel this way. It's that you stopped making his realization the end goal. Because at the end of the day, his regret changes nothing about what you've built for yourself. If he reaches out, you no longer see it as validation. You see it as confirmation of what you already knew, that you were worth more than he realized at the time, that his loss was inevitable the moment he failed to see your value when it mattered. But the question is no longer, will he regret losing me? The real question is, do I still care? And that's the most freeing moment of all. Because once you get there, once you reach a place where his regret is his burden, not yours, that's when you finally understand what real closure is. It was never in his apology. It was never in his realization. It was in you finally seeing yourself the way you were meant to be seen, without needing anyone else to confirm it. And that's when you win.